Hi, AT from CNC at Home. I found this cute little birdhouse and thought it would be a fun project to do. This is on a site called 3axis.co. I will put a link to this particular birdhouse in the description below. One thing I want to caution you about this type of site is they make money a variety of ways, and one is by advertising and click-throughs. You will find click-throughs all over the place, and it's difficult to find exactly the one you need to click on to download something like this. This is not what you want to click on over here on the left. This banner on top, not what you want to click on. These little funky things on the right, not what you want to click on. This thing over here, not what you want to click on. These down here, no, you don't want to click on these either. This big banner down at the bottom, you don't want to click on that. But here, this is actually our download for this particular, what they're calling a 3D puzzle. So be very careful when downloading from this or sites like this to make sure that what you're downloading is what you intend to download. You don't want to download something that potentially has some sort of evil software on it. I've already downloaded the vector file for this. I want to go ahead and get that loaded into LightBurn. So I will go ahead and do that and take a look. Here we see the file loaded. It's on layer 27 by default. For some reason, that happens to be the color. I'm going to switch it over to my layer 00 and then zoom out because this is definitely bigger than my working area. I'm going to rotate this whole thing so that it fits on my screen better. I'm just going to press the period, and that'll rotate it 90 degrees each time I press it. And then I will put this in the lower left-hand corner of my machine's working area. And because it's right on the edge there, I'm going to hold the control key and I'm going to move it up just a couple millimeters by hitting the up arrow. This particular section, as we can see, is not quite up against my left hand. It's not quite my X of 0 over here, so I'll leave that where it is. This is bigger than my working area, so I'm not going to be able to do this in one burn. It's also bigger than one sheet of craft plywood, so I'm not going to be able to do this on one sheet of wood. To start with, I want to draw on one of my tool layers a rectangle that's going to represent my material. I'm going to come up here and set the width of this to 24 inches. Even though I work in millimeters, I can type in 24 inches and LightBurn will convert that for me. And we'll go by 12 inches and then we'll lock that back in place. I will put that in the lower left-hand corner of my working area. As we can see, this birdhouse is barely going to fit. We zoom in down here. There's enough room down here. So everything's going to work. It is bigger than my burning area, as I said, so I'm going to need to do this in a couple different passes. The first thing I want to do, not make another rectangle, is I want to group everything in a way that I can use it for burning. So to do that, I'm going to ungroup this. You can see our little dash lines changed a little bit when we did that. And then I'm going to press the control key, select that part up there, and just scroll down. I want to get all of that. Press the control key. Oh, now I've done it. Let's undo that a couple times. Okay, all that stuff's on its own. So I'm going to come over here. I'm just going to grab all of that, put that in its own group. And then down here, I'm going to grab all of this and put it in its own group. Well, no, not all of it. I'm going to press the Control key, and I'm not going to have this window frame, this front of the birdhouse, and this little flower detail, because those definitely are outside of my material. I'm going to unselect those. I'm going to keep this piece selected. I could unselect this, burn all of this stuff, move the piece of material over, try to line it up and get the rest of this burned. I'm going to use an alignment feature within LightBurn to do that work for me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all of the stuff that's currently highlit, and I'm going to go ahead and put that on a separate layer just to help keep track of everything. This stuff up here, we'll get that on its own layer, and we can leave this stuff on the black layer. I'm going to take this blue layer and move it up to the top because that's what I'm going to do first. Black layer I'll do second, and this red layer up here is going to be a completely separate burnout to put a new piece of material on there. So for now, I'm just going to leave that up there. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to turn off the output. So that's not even part of this project. We can see that quickly in our preview that it's just this lower part. Because these parts on the black layer are going to be on a second burn, I can turn those off for output right now as well, and we can see what's going to happen on the first burn. This piece extends past my working area, and I really can't do that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn off that layer for a second, and I'm going to zoom in. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to essentially cut this piece and have it as a separate element. We'll see as I select that, the whole thing is highlit, or it's got our little dashed lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle. I'm going to put it on a tool layer. And I'm going to have it, I'm going to do my rectangle like such. Then I'm going to select this piece that I want to cut. Holding the Shift key, I'm going to select my working rectangle, my tool layer rectangle. And then up in my tools, I'm going to use Cut Shape. I'll click on that. Now you'll notice that the little dashed lines have changed. This part is no longer selected. It's technically a separate piece. So if I select that, oh, interesting, these didn't come. Okay, I'll need to do this. Let me do this first. Let me grab all of this. I'm going to group that together. So it's always its own little piece. Anyway, you can see I can move it and it's just where I'd cut. And I'm going to put that on its own layer for now. And no, it's not a fill. I want to do line. There we go. We'll turn our other pieces on. Actually, this needs to be on the black layer now that I'm looking at all of my stuff. Now you might think I'm crazy for doing this, and maybe I am. What's going to happen is I'm going to burn all this stuff in blue first. And then once that's burned, I'm going to move my material over, and then I'm going to use the print and cut option to select this point and this point on my drawing and define that by moving the laser to those specific locations, because I'll know where this is because this has already been burned on my material, so I can move the laser right to there, be able to select that point. I'll move the laser to here, select this point. To make it a little more accurate, I could maybe even go from up here. The further away the points are, the better the math is. So I might do that. I could come over here and use one of these points. You know, select one of these and then select one of these. I'll see when I actually do the burn which one I do. What the cut and print allows us to do is basically set those 2 points, and LightBurn will then recalculate where the material is and where it needs to cut these. So it essentially picks up where it left off. This comes in super handy if you have a pass-through on your laser and you're doing really long burns. You burn your work area, you move the material, you use the print and cut, align everything up, and then continue the burn. So that's how I'm going to do that. I'll need to set my parameters, obviously, before I do that. So I'm going to go down to my laser, and I'm going to be doing this out of craft plywood. So we'll start with that layer. And it's 3mm craft plywood. I'm going to assign my cut-through parameters to the blue layer, the black layer, and even though we're not doing that right now, do the red layer. When it comes time to do the red part of this, I'll be able to just turn that back on for output. I turned that off at some point. Now that all of this is set up, I literally can put my material in the laser, get it set up, focused, aligned, do a frame to make sure that all of this is on the material, because we're very close on both sides. So I want to make sure that the burn is going to be on there. Then once it's done doing the blue, I'll be able to slide the material over and do my print and cut. Use a couple of points that are already on here to do my alignment, and then have it burn what's in black. So for now, we'll just turn the output off on the black. We're ready to send this to the laser. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and save the project. Let's head over to the laser and see how this works. Now that I'm at the laser, there were a couple changes I had to make due to changes. The wasteboard that I have is new. It's a larger wasteboard, and because of that, it affected how far I was going to cut before I hit the edge of the wasteboard. This affects how far then to the right that I wanted to cut. So that changed a little bit. Also, the board was warped, and I needed to put that big heavy weight on there to help hold it flat. That changed the order of what I was going to cut. So I cut the stuff on the bottom and over on that upper left-hand corner first. Once all of that was burned to my limit, then I moved the weight and I burned some more. You'll notice here, the laser actually hits that weight. I was lucky that the material didn't move with that as well. Once all of this is done, then I will move the material and do the print and cut. Now comes the really tricky part. We need to take our material, we need to move it over, then we need to use the print and cut feature within LightBurn to finish this area that we started. Up here we need to finish this off, we need to finish this piece off, which goes way over, and then there's some other pieces that fill in here as well. So to move this, I'm going to probably need to remove some of these pieces that have been cut out. So let's go ahead and do that. Just get this up out of the way. Maybe. Sounds apparently simpler than it is. Why won't you come out? What are you doing? There we go. This very first piece is being stubborn too. Get that to sneak out. I don't want to break it. Probably didn't cut all the way through, would be my guess. Yeah. So we can see here, there's a defect or something in the wood and it didn't cut all the way through. So I have to try and save that somehow. Same thing happened here. And this is why I do 3 passes. 2 passes will get through, but occasionally you run into some sort of extra glob of glue, some weird hard piece of wood, and it doesn't cut all the way through. Looks like we have some of that over here as well that we'll need to deal with. Anyway, let's get this out of the way for now, and we can get these pieces taken out. That was my mistake. That was an alignment issue when I missed these. When I was selecting what to cut, I missed these 2 cutouts, and then when I went to put them in, I had accidentally shifted something, and so we'll cover that with some paint. I'm glad these came out as well as they did. This would have really been a hassle to try and free some of these up if it hadn't cut all the way through. Get all these little pieces cleaned up. It would help if I put this in the correct way. LightBurn's going to take care of quite a bit of the recalculation on this, but if I have it upside down, that's not going to work so well. Alright, now we'll get to the print and cut part of this. The first thing we need to do is position the laser to our first point for the print and cut. I'm going to maneuver this laser just little increments at a time and make sure that it's as close to where I'm going to tell LightBurn that spot is. I needed to add my weight to hold the material down because again this sheet is slightly warped. I'm going to maneuver the laser in just 0.1 millimeter increments to get it as close as possible. And I'm going to use where this little notch turns, that corner, I'm going to use that one and then one down here. I'll get as close as I can, I'll position the laser and then mark that in the software, and then it'll calculate where everything is, and then we'll be able to cut the rest of this out. To mark my first position within LightBurn, I need an object to select, and I can't select a corner. What I'm going to do is just create a circle and then center that right on top of the notch where I'm putting the laser mark. That way I can select that as my object. Down below I'm going to make another circle and use it the same way for my second spot. I'm going to get that positioned right on a corner, and when it's time to select these I can select an object and tell LightBurn that's where the laser is currently located. So since my first position is already set, I'll go ahead and tell LightBurn that that object is it. Now we'll move the laser down and do the same thing for our other position. I'll use really small increments, get it moved right on target, and then select the second circle and tell LightBurn that's where we are. That looks pretty good for my second point. I'll go ahead and set that. With the print and cut selections done, I'm going to highlight what I need to burn. I'm going to make sure that my cut selected graphics is on so that it only cuts those things that I've selected. Alright, I think I have everything set. Fingers crossed. Let's get this started and see what happens. Probably hit that. I'll have to watch the video. I see where the laser head ended up, and it probably bumped into our weight that helps hold this down. Let's see if these pieces come out. Hopefully they'll all... Well, this flower came out. Get that on our pile of parts. These are all scrap pieces. Okay, that one came up. Awesome. It's just a little bit of a burr there. I'll go in and clean that up with a razor blade. Same with that one. Yeah, here's a spot, and here's a spot where this didn't cut all the way through, so there's probably some glue or something. This didn't cut all the way through here, and we know that this piece didn't cut through. Big chunk there. This piece had an issue in the corner there, and this had an issue up here on this one. A little bit of cleanup on those, shouldn't be too bad. We'll come in with a razor blade and fix that. That one's going to take a little bit of doing to get that one out, so I'll get going on that. This one looks like we might be able to. I'll still need to do a little cleanup. Pay no attention to that sliver that came off. This is the front, so we'll be fine. So I have this off. We'll just need to come in and clean this up a little bit. This one's going to be a little trickier. Oop, nope, it popped off. Nice. Almost like it was intended to have a tab. I may have to come in with a knife. I don't want to break this little piece. If I do break it, I've got some scraps. I can cut this piece out separately on its own. So anyway, we've got this part cut out. The next step will be to get another sheet of material in here and cut the rest of this puzzle birdhouse out. For these last pieces, I moved them around a little bit from their default. I did that because I had this piece of scrap that was more in an L shape, and it fit the pieces nicely if I moved the far right piece up to the upper left hand corner. It ended up working really well, and I could use this piece of scrap to finish off the project and not waste a full sheet. This video's gotten a little long, so I'm going to cut it off here. I was able to get all the pieces put together. They're not glued. I want to stain them up. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It's a nice overview of LightBurn's print and cut feature. If you like the content of our channel, think about subscribing. It really helps us out. Enjoy doing your CNC at home projects.